welcome to Bookstackers! Lisa's feeling a little bit under the weather, so she's not as talkative, that's why. This is our spoiler-free review of Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte. Jane Eyre is essentially about an orphan, Jane Eyre, and her experience growing up. We start with her as a child, and then as she grows into a young lady, and basically her adventures in the world. And I use the term adventures very lightly because
doesn't get very adventurous.
She doesn't do a
the
lot.
End.
Yeah, she doesn't do a lot. But you know,
I mean, she's not even really adventuring. It just kind of happens, and she's like, oh, okay.
Yeah, but she's an interesting character. So, Jane Eyre. Do you reckon it was character or plot driven?
I mean, I'd say character, right?
Yeah.
It's basically like an autobiography. There's no
Strongly
plot.
character. It's a fictional autobiography. So. It's definitely super heavily character driven. Like Jane Eyre, a lot of the time, and a lot of the pages of this book are her reflecting and watching and analysing what's happening in front of her. And so you kind of know the character Jane Eyre very well by the end. She doesn't really hold back in that respect.
It's written as an autobiography. Like, it's Jane Eyre, the older, writing her life story. Which, you know, she thinks she tried to make it more interesting.
The plot points that happen are very spread out. So, like, something will happen and then you're waiting for this long, and then something will happen and you're waiting this long. Like, so there's not a lot that happens plot-wise until, like, the very end, and then suddenly everything's kind of tied up and you're like, oh, all right, cool. It's very gradual, her journey. So, I mean, if you like that, you'll probably like Jane Eyre.
So, out of the many characters in this book, who was your fave?
I liked all the smaller characters that kind of influenced Jane in a good way, just because it was really enjoyable to read those interactions, mainly because whenever she didn't enjoy someone she was interacting with, she'd be like, yeah, I don't know, and I'm just worse than them, and blah blah blah, and stuff like that. And she would kind of be very depressing, or just very, like, stating the facts, whereas when she was chatting to friends, she's like, oh, Rita, I was so happy to, and I'm like, oh, that's nice. So I liked Helen Burns, her friend from the orphanage, and I liked Bessie, who was the nurse maid person when she was living with her aunt and cousins. And I also liked the little girl Adele that she was being the governess to when she was at Mr. Rochester's, because she was fun. She, like, spoke French and she was very funny. Although that was one of my gripes, is that there would be bits where Adele would be talking in French, and at the beginning, she'd translate it in English, and then later she would just leave it.
Gotta get that Google Translate out.
Yeah, and you just get, like, Jane's response to it, and you had to just guess what she'd said, and I was like, not everyone here learned French, okay, Charlotte Bronte.
I hate when that happens in books, because I'm like, now I need to get Google Translate out, because I need to know what
it happens saying. A lot in, like, the classics, because I guess everyone learnt French. Who was yours?
So as not to spoil anything, Gypsy Lady.
Ah, yes. Gypsy Lady is great. You'll like Gypsy Lady when you get to her.
I just thought it was funny.
What were your dislikes and likes, and what were the cliches?
It's so long, and nothing happens. And I don't have the attention span for that shit.
Yeah.
Like, reading it was such a struggle for me.
I think it's just because, like, the language is quite old as well. Like, it's very old-fashioned style.
It made me feel like I was in literature class.
Yeah, and it's very slow. Like, the pace is quite slow, and... Shut up. The pace is quite slow, and even when something does happen, Jane kind of reacts very level-headed, and he's like, okay, that's weird. And
I can appreciate that she's so level-headed, because I don't like when characters sort of, like, blow things out of proportion. But at the same time, I'm like, can something happen?
Like, when stuff did happen, the thing is, I think this book would have been awesome if it was a short story. And I feel like the movie of Jane Eyre will be good because they can kind of take out all the extra talking and faff. Because, like, you know, it's nice language, and it's kind of beautiful in a way and poetic, but there's a whole book of it, and oh my god, you just want stuff to happen. There were so many times I just zoned out and was like, what happened? And I'd go back and reread and be like, nothing happened. I think this book is just kind of hard to read if you're just doing it kind of for enjoyment, and if you're not used to classic literature, just because there's just so much.
I think, like, if we had read this for our literature class in school, it might have been more interesting, because we would have had the class discussions and everything.
Yeah. Well, I find, like, already just chatting about this with you, it's way more interesting to discuss this book once you've read it, and you can kind of look back on it and jump to the interesting bits. But when you're reading it, especially because I had no idea what was going to happen in Jane Eyre, but when you're reading it, you're sort of like, when's the next thing going to happen? And
Never.
to be fair, like, the thing that happened, like, in the end, you think back and you're like, okay, that was kind of interesting plot line. But
yeah, but that's at the end.
it could have been a short story. Also, I wasn't a big fan of the 20-year age gap between Jane Eyre and Mr. Rochester, because that made me uncomfortable.
I can't, in good conscience, recommend this to somebody, because I know how much I suffered. But, like, if you like classics and stuff, like historical fiction, I guess, if you like autobiographies, it's got that kind of feel to it.
I understand it's a classic, and I appreciate that it's a classic, and I feel like it'd be a good book to analyze, but also it has been analyzed by a lot of people, so you could definitely, like, search up online different analyses of different things and symbolism, and you can also look at our in-depth discussion where we talk about the spoilers and all that sort of stuff. This book, it's sort of a slow read, so if you're interested in that and you care more about characters, there's not a big character development that happens. Like, there's sort of little changes and shifts in Jane, but other than that, it's not a big amount, so there's that. I give this 3 stars.
I give it 2
out of 5.
I give it 2.
And the only reason I gave it 3 is because of, like, the things that did happen, when they finally happened, I was like, cool, that's interesting. And also it kind of had, like, a really eerie gothic feel to it when that happened, and I enjoyed that. But other than that, there was a lot of waffle, and it was hard to read, and I think probably because, like, reading this for enjoyment, your brain's not necessarily thinking about the analysis, and it's sort of like, come on, do something with your life.
Unless you enjoy boring books, in which case, go for it.
But especially because the books we've been reading recently have been very adventurous, and so you come to this and you're just like, where's the magic fairy, though? I think Jane Eyre is a good classic, so if you like classics, go ahead and read it. But yeah, for us, it probably just...
I feel like most people have, like, already read it anyway.
Yeah.
Unless you're like us and just avoid the classics for however long.
But yeah, just for us, wasn't a favourite, you know. Now, we are going to pick our next book, so...
Daughter of the Pirate King.
Hope you have a good week. We'll see you next time. Bye.